All right. We would like to thank you so much for joining us. We had a technical issue in the background. That's why it took us so long to come here live. But thank God we made it through here. And today, our discussion is going to be on the Liberian Revolution of April 1980. I don't know how old you were during that time, but I was very young. And I remember all of the not everything, but I could see, people screaming, people looting, and a lot of things went on April 12th, 1980. Or before then, the Rest Riot in 1979. That's what I meant to say. Before the coup in 1980. And so today's podcast, we will be looking at the Liberian Revolution of April of 1980. And my name is Pastor Alexander Red, the host, and your co-host is Reverend Suah as Deddeh. The 1980 coup in Liberia, which resulted in the assassination of President William R. Tubman Jr. and brought the PRC, that is the People's Redemption Council, led by Master Sergeant Samuel K. Doe to power, was the combination of various interconnected factors. And these factors span the economic, political, and social spectrum and reflected deep seated grievances within the Liberian society. So, today's podcast, we will examine the critical factors that led to this pivotal moment in Liberian history, including the economic disparity, political exclusion, corruption, social and ethnic tensions, and the government's handling of the rice riots of 1979. So please join us, invite a friend, and share this link. Just click the share button so that your friends, your families, and relatives can be a part of this podcast today. Once again, welcome and join us as we explore the complex issues that set the stage for the coup of April 12th, 1980, and shaped Liberia's future. Reverend Deddeh is here in the background. He has some technical problems too, but hopefully that has been resolved. So I am going to bring him in so that we can take a look uh, of what went on, a review of 1980. Reverend Deddeh, welcome back to the podcast, Gracious Hope Podcast. Glad to see you.
Thank you, brother. We bless God for this beautiful day that He's made. We will rejoice and be glad in it because this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We are glad to form a team on this day, reflecting on April, specifically April 12th, 1980 coup. That is the main focus for today. We may discuss other issues, but that is the focus. What led to that and the consequences of that coup, the deaths that followed after the coup, families that were hurt, and the rest of that. And you started by saying some of us were at different places when the coup occurred. Uh, I was then still in junior high school on Newport Street, and I remember we heard the news that the morning when the issue occurred, and people were disturbed because it was kind
Hmm.
of our first experience with coup, Alex, and we were not used to that. So all of us were taken by surprise about the military coup orchestrated by Samuel Doe and other enlisted men of the armed forces of Liberia. We might not capture everything today because there's a lot of things to discuss about that coup and before and after. So we will try to capture some of the issues today. We tend to go into history so that we get some backdrop for us to appreciate where we came from so that when people look back at the coup, they will take these different historical facts into consideration as they discuss the coup themselves or the political atmosphere at that time. So welcome. We hope to have a good discussion. And like Alex said, we encourage you to please share this video to your friends, your loved ones, and your enemies. I always say when I do my devotion, share with your enemies as well because they also need to know what's going on around them. So welcome, brother. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing great. It's Saturday and it's warm, good looking, sunshine in my state, and it is the feeling toward the spring season in the United States. So I'm thankful and I'm grateful to God for the nice weather, and also I'm thankful to be in. your presence today, you that are watching today. So as we all share our insights into our country's history, tumultuous past, and how we all can weave through to see a better way forward. We will not just focus on the causes of the conflict, but we'll also focus on ways and means in which we can bring about healing, reconciliation, and also peace and stability. We are getting there gradually to see ourselves as Africa's one of Africa's oldest countries, getting back on course with all that we need from infrastructure. That is the physical infrastructure, road network, to the basic necessities such as drinking water, electricity, and like I said, the road network, and then creating the atmosphere or the environment for job creation. And those are basic things that we need for our people, and every government has espoused that. However, we see snippets or packets of that, but not to its fullest. So we are all hoping. And if you are just joining us, this is the Gracious Hope Podcast, and this is a platform that is geared toward promoting and preserving the Liberian Christian heritage. And so we talk about things that will bring positive aspect to the dialogue, or may I say, discourse of our country, finding ways and means in which we can make our country better. Okay. And so then make a comment below. Okay. Opine, because you need to be part of this too. Okay. It's a national discussion, and we all are looking for ways in which we can do better, or our leaders can do better, but we must create that awareness. And this is the atmosphere or the avenue in which we provide this platform to discuss these issues, because they are very mundane in everyone's life. And so then let us start with the causes that led to the April 12th, 1980. We all heard about the Rest Riot of 1979. I was a little boy at the time, and there were demonstrations going on, and also looting and killing. The government's response to the protest. There were the progressives, political parties who wanted change. They wanted they wanted pluralism, a pluralistic democracy, and so the tension was hiding to a point where people want to change. But what caused that? From my own perspective, and from what I gather from research and what I know practically, was one, the economic disparities and mismanagement. People yearn for change, people yearn for inclusion. So Liberia was characterized by significant economic inequalities, with wealth concentrated among quote unquote American Liberian elites who descended from free Americans, or we as a Caribbean slaves. Let's put it that way, according to our history. So the majority of the indigenous population, they live in poverty. It doesn't mean that they were not part of the government. I mean, they were ushered in, some of them, but they had limited access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. And so economic mismanagement and reliance on a few key exports, such as rubber and iron ore, remember Firestone, remember bone mines and other places, they made situation even worse, leading to widespread dissatisfaction. So that is one aspect of it. And if we look at the broader spectrum of everything, we look at the political exclusion and authoritarianism. And people can say, well, it started from Tubman time. Well, that's a debate. William Tubman ruled for almost what, 27 years. If I'm correct, please correct me. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. And we also look at the True Whig Party, dominated by American Liberian elites. They had been in power for over a century, effectively creating a one-party state. So the agitation caused by that propel the progressives, those who want to change. Remember the Progressive People's Party and other political groups, and the political activism that rose in the yard of the University of Liberia. We have student activists fighting for change and advocating for change. And so political power was concentrated in the hands of a small elite with little representation or voice for the indigenous majority. And this exclusion foster resentment and a desire for change. So those are the two areas I will now speak on, and I will allow Reverend Deddeh to go ahead and look at some other factors. Like I said, if you want to contribute, fine, write comments below, and then we can read that out. Questions or comments, please, you're welcome. Also, make your voice heard. Reverend Deddeh?
Thank you, brother. To give the audience some historical facts, we keep hearing about American Liberians versus the indigenous, which appears to be the case, but there were some indigenous who were also part of the American Liberian sector. But we know that William Tolbert Jr. Was the 20th president of the Republic of Liberia, who was assassinated on April 12, 1980. William Tubber was born May 13, 1913. Um, to his parents in Bensonville, his dad, Tubber Richard Tubber Jr., William Richard Tubber Sr., happens to come from the uh, African American sector. William Tolbert was born in Bensonville, Liberia, to William Richard Tolbert Sr. and Charlotte Augusta Tolbert Nee Huff of Grand Cape County. So Tolbert also has some indigenous connection as well. But it's good to mention that the Tolbert and the Huff families were the American Liberian families of African American descent. This is where this whole American Liberian is coming in now. The Huff family is said to be originated from Virginia, while William Tolbert Sr. was the son of Daniel Frank Tolbert, a former American slave from South Carolina, who immigrated to Liberia around the 1878. So Daniel Frank Tolbert reportedly migrated to Liberia aboard the ship called Baku Azak, along with other Black South Carolinians who sought to settle in Liberia. So the Tolbert clan, Alex, was one of the largest American Liberian families in Liberia. So Tolbert Jr., William Tolbert, the president, got married to Victoria Davy, Victoria A. Davy, of also American Liberian descent, but also has the wide connection as well. So looking at this historicity, we see the connection between Tolbert family in the connection with the American Liberian. This is where this whole American Liberian thing comes into place. But let's not forget that being a Baptist minister in 1965, he became the first African to serve as the president of the World Baptist Alliance. So Tolbert was connected internationally. But let's also know that he was the 23rd vice president of Liberia to William V.S. Tuckman, and served until Tuckman died, of course, in 1971. After 27 years in office, he died in 71, and Tolbert became president. Okay, so Tolbert's early presidency saw liberal reforms. So we're coming down to some of the issues that evolved subsequently when he became president. So his early presidency saw some liberal reforms and the adoption of a non-alignment stance that created problem between Tolbert and his friends, Americans and other people, because America always wanted the president of Liberia to be aligned friendly with America. So when he decided to go non-alignment, it also created a problem. However, there were growing economic troubles and tensions between the American Liberians and indigenous, which led to a lot of instability. Now, this raging instability, Alex, culminated into Tolbert's assassination in a surprising military coup, like I said, on April 12, 1980, by 17 enlisted men of the Armed Forces of Liberia, who later forms the People's Redemption Council, PRC, led by Master Sergeant Samuel Doe and co-chaired by Thomas West Said. Now, the coup makers, you mentioned that, Alex, the coup makers marked the end of 133 years of American Liberian rule in Liberia, one-party rule for the TWP, which did not go down well with a lot of Liberians and the progressives, as we mentioned. So the social base, the coup or rampant corruption and other things. Now, fellow Liberians, as we go through this program today, we really want you to chime in this discussion,
Hmm.
because there are different issues, different situations that culminated to the coup on April 12, 1980. The rice price, and the 19 the riot in Morovia, all these things pointed to the coup. But what really caused this coup? Was it economic issue, or was it the difference between the indigenous and the American Liberians, or what really happened? And that's what we want to discuss today. One of the factors will be economic issues, because there was a big disparity between the American Liberians and the indigenous that come to survive in a country.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
Alex.
And I did mention that earlier, the economic disparity, the few, the wealth in the hands of the few, and most Liberians, as particularly indigenous Liberians and educated indigenous Liberians, they feel the pang of injustice or unfairness. And so they rose up to do a lot of stuff. And that's where the political activism came in, with all of the progressives coming in to speak out against the system. But another factor too that we have to look at, which of course the coup makers and the coup doers, let me put it that way, the PRC, they said they overthrew that government because of corruption and nepotism. And those
Mhm.
are the main charges that they brought. But despite initiating some reforms, when it took place, when Toba administration was in place, the Toba administration was widely perceived as corrupt, and that is the characterization of the PRC. That's what the label against the Tubman administration: corruption and nepotism, and those were allegations of what nepotism. And we look at nepotism in its definition. We look at connection. People who are close to you, family members giving them top positions and leaving out others. So that is a sense of injustice, or it is unfairness. And also those allegations of nepotism with significant government positions being filled by the Tubba's relatives and close allies, that of course fuel public discontent, and it also undermine trust in the government. Now, the reason why we are bringing up these things is that we still see that happening. Okay, we'll need to learn the lessons from years to years. We need to
Or
learn
we don't
these
want them
things.
to repeat themselves in the
Exactly. That's what
government.
we bring
Yeah.
up these things.
Mhm.
So remember
Yeah.
corruption, and I remember this one word, rampant, that was used every time. Rampant corruption, rampant corruption, and
Let's say
so
it was overused, Alex.
it was used and it's still being used today. And so if we look at corruption and nepotism, those are public being, or society being still going on. Also, we look at social and ethnic tensions. You remember the crime and the Gil tribe, right? They had this tension. So we look at the social and ethnic tensions, because when the PRC came in, um, uh, they also practice nepotism and corruption. So then, if we look at the societal divide between the American, quote unquote, American Liberians and the indigenous populations, was profound in every way. With the indigenous population, with the elite, that is the American Liberians, enjoying privileges and status that later on uh, made the indigenous people couldn't have access to everything else like them. And so this division created a volatile environment with ethnic tensions simmering beneath the surface. And so then we remember the Nima raid, a lot of other things that went on in our country when the PRC took place. But as we discussed, the causes before the 1980 revolution, we look at the 1979, the rice riot and the repression. that occurred. So the immediate trigger for the coup was the government's attempt, that is the Tubba government's attempt to increase the price of rice. And you said that earlier, which of course rice is a staple food, which led to the April 14, 1979 rice riots. And so the government's heavy-handed response to these protests resulted in many deaths, and also highlighted the regime's disconnect from the populace and its repressive nature. So people made a big issue out of the government's response to the protesters. And that, of course, inflamed public sentiment against the late President Tarbell. And I mean, like I said, I was very young at the time, and people, talk a whole lot about politics, but based on research and later on from what I read and writing books about our history, I got to learn a whole lot about the tension that arose between the progressives, and that is those who want to change, and the Tarbell administration. And Tarbell, he was a reformist. Let's be fair. He was a reformist. He wanted to change things around. And many might have blamed him that he was dragging his legs, slowly. He was so slow in making the reform. But his mindset was, okay, we have to open up the system to pluralism or pluralistic democracy. So Tarbell was willing to open up the system to allow all of these new parties to come to fruition, so that it could be a democratic environment. And so he was bringing everything regarding an inclusive society, but many blame him that he wasted time. However, the PRC government, or before then, the coup plotters and those who executed the plot, from the Master Sergeant Simon Doe and his men, they might have been influenced by popular sentiments, and also looking at those political parties and those progressives that were pressuring the government as a whole. And so the inflammation of public sentiment against the Tarbell government also can be seen as a factor that contributed to that revolution of 1980 on April 12th. Reverend Deddeh?
That's a bunch of things you just place on the table. So we want to just look at them and dissect them a little bit, because the conflict between the Crown and the Guild and the Mana and rest of that did not happen during Tarbell's regime. Maybe they were festering at that time, but they were not pronounced.
Later on.
Yeah, they came later on, which even made the whole thing worse after the coup. But it's important to note, talking about this reform, we know that Tarbell became president in 1971 when President Tuckman died in office in London, in a hospital in London while he was visiting. So Tarbell became president and initiated some liberal reforms. But again, though he was re-elected in 1975, his government was criticized, Alex, sharply for failing to address the deep economic disparities between the different sectors of the population, notably the American-Liberians who had dominated, you and I know, and those watching know or may not know, who dominated the country since independence, and the various indigenous ethnic groups which constituted the majority of the population. So trouble grew gradually, and dissent increased amongst the population. Now, because Tarbell was a member of one of the most influential and affluent American-Liberian families, everything, you mentioned that too, everything from cabinet appointments to economic policy was tainted with allegations of nepotism. But the argument was, from Tuckman, some of those who were appointed to cabinet positions were qualified people who were Liberians to who should work. But then people still saw that as nepotism. And it was interesting to know, at least, that Tarbell did not just see himself as an American Liberian, but as a Pele man. Thanks to his father, William Sr., who spoke Pele. And Tarbell was, in fact, he was the second president after Daniel B. Warner to speak an indigenous language. So Toba used that. I grew up in Bentonville for some time. I went to elementary school there, and I heard him speaking Bele to the people. And one thing he was famous for saying was "Kukele Kukadono." We all are one people, and people gravitated towards that. Now, but this initiated by the president, the former president, caused a great deal of chagrin among the American Liberians, who accused Talbot of letting the peasants, quote unquote, letting the peasants into the kitchen. So even though Talbot tried to bring some moderate reforms, his own people, his American Liberian hegemony did not like that. And that might have contributed to his downfall and his demise. So while the indigenous majority felt change was occurring slowly, many American Liberians felt it was too rapid and it needed Talbot to slow down. And Talbot was not paying attention to them, even though he had his own flaws, but he was not paying attention to them. So despite following Talbot's 27 years of presidency, Talbot refused. Talbot refused to follow his predecessor's oath of office until death. So what did he do? He successfully worked for a constitutional amendment to buy the president from serving more than 8 terms in office. His hegemony did not like that. So in 1976, he vowed fierce opposition, Alex, to members of the legislature who sought to repeal the amendment and again permit Talbot's effort to change that perpetual presidency to not more than 8 terms. So Talbot tried to play his part, but everybody would not be satisfied with what you do. But just 3 years later, when the True Party partisans petitioned him to seek the amendments repeal, he replied with a strong statement, okay, and that he said it was even encourage his previous position. And what was his previous position? And I have a quote here: "I will serve my country as long as I have life. I don't have to be president to do so." So why they wanted him to perpetuate himself in power? He did not want that. That's one side. Then the foreign policy too also might have had some hand in his downfall, especially when he decided to go to non-alignment stance. And then he started establishing relationship with Soviet Union and China and Cuba and the Eastern blocs, and America did not like that, So in 1974, Talbot accepted aid from Soviet Union for the first time, and of course, Uncle Sam did not like that. So the factors that led to his downfall might not have only been local, but international as well, Alex.
Yes. And just before we take a break here, let me just piggyback on that. Yes, the influence of global political climate also helped, or was the cause of that revolution as well, because the Cold War era, played a role with ideological battles between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, like you said, influencing internal dynamics in many other African countries, including Liberia. So the possibility of gaining support from either superpower emboldened those who were playing the coup, and that is true. Okay, and if you're just joining us, this is the Gracious Hope Live podcast, and we are here every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And please share this link with your friends, your families, and your loved ones. And thanks to Mr. Henry Costa, who says that he is going to be sharing this on his platform. He has a vast platform, and we are grateful for you to share this with your audience as well. You got almost 500,000 of subscribers, or those who subscribe to your platform. So we appreciate that, for you to help us share this, because this is a very, very important discourse for our country. And so we want to thank you for sharing this. And for our audience, if you're just joining us, we'll be right back. We're going to take a break. We are talking about the Liberian Revolution of April 1980. My name is Pastor Alexander Red, along with Reverend Suah Deddeh. And we'll like your comments. We'll be back. We'll get back to your comments shortly. But let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Please don't go away. All right, and we are right back here. Reverend Deddeh will be right back. He's taking a break there. And so we are discussing the Liberian Revolution of April 1980, when we witness history in the making. That is a new era, when the coup occurred, with the military of the country against the status quo. And so the military dissatisfaction with the Toba administration and within the Liberian military, there was dissatisfaction. And this dissatisfaction regarding disparities in treatment, pay, and conditions compared to American Liberians officers and the civilian elite. So tension was also in the military. And so this discontent within the ranks of the military of the country provided a ready support base for the coup that took place on April 12, 1980. And Reverend Deddeh and I will be going deeper into that, or giving a closer examination into that, because they are all factors that created a volatile mix of dissatisfaction, economic hardship, political repression, and social injustice. That's, of course, all those things or factors set the stage for the coup. And so then the event was a dramatic manifestation of deep seated issues within the Liberian society, signaling a breaking point and a new beginning. So, albeit we all witnessed the turbulent past, and of course, that new chapter opened in 1980 in our country's history. And as I await Reverend Deddeh to come back here after he solves the technical issue that he's facing right now, I will take a look here at some of the questions that you have been posting here. And let me bring one of your questions here. This is River Says Pro. He said, I think the progressives, including Bacchus Matthew, Tipote, that is Tipote, Dr. Tipote, and there's etc., exacerbated the hate. They lied to the natives about a lot of change. Reverend Deddeh is back here. Okay, so we have
The
we
internet
have
is
River.
doing its own thing to the edits, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, we have River Says Pro saying that those progressive, like, Bacchus Matthew, Dr. Tipote, and all of those other progressive, those who are advocating for social justice or change as a whole, for a pluralistic democracy. He says they were also fomenting hatred, and I'm not sure how they were doing that.
That's a good
He
question.
did explain
How did they
further.
do that?
He said
How
they
did they do
lied to
that?
the natives about a lot of things. What they lied about, he didn't explain that. So, what will you think about that question?
It's for me. It's just open ended, Alex. When you make these kind of comments, these broad general comments when we're discussing this kind of important topic, you confuse the discussion, because we want to discuss the nitty gritty. We want to know what really happened. How did it exacerbate the political atmosphere? What did it do or did not do that promoted what happened? So I don't know who is River Says Pro. We appreciate his comment, but if he can come back with follow up to explain, give us an idea on how these progressives exacerbated the situation and lied, I see, and lied to the natives about a lot of things. What did they say? Tipote play his part. Gabriel Bacchus Matthew play his part. Amos Claudius Sawyer play his part. Other than play, they were not angels. They were human beings who was clamoring for peace and justice and democracy in Liberia. So they were not perfect people, and none of us will be claiming to be for perfection. None of us can claim that. So when people make comments, we really appreciate the comments, but please be a little specific so that we all glean some education and knowledge from that. But having said that, Alice, I was mentioning something. And I want to come back to that a little bit more, because we see that there were so many factors that brought the situation on us in Liberia. I mentioned that, and now that the president introduced this the progressive thing, I recall that around around 1973, the country returned to the two-party system. It was not a multi-party, but two-party system in 1973. And the country returned to two-party system when the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, headed by Bacchus, Gabriel Bacchus Matthew, became organized and recognized as a legitimate opposition party. It was not easy. It was not an easy task at that time. There was still division right within the Tory party when the president did that, because they wanted it to still be a one-party country or one-party hegemony. So by the late 1970s, Togo became increasingly open to overtures of economic assistance, from different people, different countries, including Libya and Cuba, which made things worse for him. So I don't know. All we are saying today, Alex and I, is for us to reflect on these things so that we don't repeat what happened. Alex already mentioned the rest riot in early April
Yeah,
1979.
yeah, and that rest riot event, uh, we know that it was because of the price hike, right? But there are some people who also debate that the rest riot riots, riots were initially sparked by the government's proposal to increase, right, the price of rice, right? So
Yeah.
that is our staple food. But then they said some people argue that the rationale behind the price hike was to encourage local production of rice. Do you buy that?
What? again, we're not part of the government to say whether or not we're going to buy that or don't buy that, because I recall that in the early 1979, Togo's Minister of Agriculture, I think it was Florence Chinaway then,
Yeah.
proposed. It was a proposal, Alex. Okay, in 1979, Florence Chinaway proposed an increase in a subsidized price of a bag of rice from $22 of a 100-pound bag of rice to $26. It was a proposal. It did not even happen. Okay, so Chinere accepted that the increase would serve as an added inducement for rice farmers to continue farming instead of just abandoning their farms for jobs in Morovia, in the cities, and the rubber plantation.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm
political
not sure whether
opponents,
that rationale really made sense to a lot of people.
yeah, that's true. But the thing is, it was a proposal. So political opponents criticized the proposal as self-serving, at least. I can still remember some of these different, well, growing up, we were still in school, then junior high, elementary school, we remember that. So pointing out that, in a way, and the Toba family operated large rice farms and would therefore realize a bigger profit than the farmers they thought they were helping. So the Progressive
Hmm.
Alliance of Liberia called for a peaceful, quote unquote, peaceful demonstration in Morovia to protest the proposed price increase. So on April 14, about 2,000 activists, at least 2,000 activists, began what was planned as a peaceful demonstration on the executive mansion. That protest, as you opened when you started this program, that protest march swelled dramatically, brother. When the protesters were joined by, en route by more than 10,000, at that time we call it Backstreet's Boys or Grown Up Boys, as we call it now. Maybe we have different name for that. 10,000s of them, according to people who counted. I don't know how they knew it was 10,000, but en route to the mansion, 10,000 of these quote unquote Backstreet Boys joined the peaceful protest, causing the march to quickly degenerate into disorderly mode of riot and destruction. That's how April 14, 1979 occurred. So widespread looting. I was in Moravia then. I saw people breaking stores. And at that time, most stores had glass doors and windows. I saw people breaking into stores, Alice. There were widespread looting, which ensued.
Yeah, and that was the act itself. But people saw that hiking price of rice or proposal. They saw that move, or they perceived that as insensitive to the economic hardships
I
facing the
agree, but it was just
majority
a
of Liberians
proposal. It was
who
not
are
even
already
passed.
struggling with poverty.
I got you. But it was just a proposal that was not even passed. And then in the face of protest, anything in protestation, sometimes people who organize protests have good intention for the protest, as we see from time to
Mhm.
time. They have good intentions, but then there are people who join the protest along the way, who have different motives, who will spoil the protest that should be peaceful and create havoc. That's what happened. An estimated $40 million worth of property were damaged.
Hmm.
Okay, and of course, at least for the one demonstrators were killed by shooting. I almost died during that time. Okay, it was on a Saturday, I remember, and my mom would allow me to go to the afternoon show or mutiny, and I was out. Almost died during
Yeah.
that rest riot.
So the rest riot, we understand the proposed price hike, but there were already things that were simmering
Mm-hmm.
under the surface, like the perceived disconnect between the common people and those who are in higher position or higher status in society. So and also people look at even the government's handling of the rest riots and the events leading up to them. They can highlight that to say, well, there was a disconnect between the Toba administration and the needs and concerns of ordinary Liberians. And so that the administrations perceive status, the elitism, and also prioritizing the interests of people like them over the well-being of the broader population, also feel resentment and a sense of injustice. So when people feel the sense of injustice, they feel that just few people, enjoying, like how we see now in our country, where certain people of the population or the segment of the society, they have money, they have new cars, they have everything, and they get that wealth overnight. And so people, they are raging about it. This man who was living in a little apartment, he's working government, even though he works and gets paid. But look, the extravagance, what he's displaying now. And this is where we see the rationale behind asset declaration. They want people to now declare assets. They want the implementation of seizing state property that people took away. And so if we transition for what happened in the past in 1980, we will look at the revolution itself, the assassination of the late President Tarver and the PRC. We know the PRC did not do well. The very issues or problems they highlighted, corruption and nepotism, they practice the same thing. Okay. And they were all politically motivated deaths going on, ethnic tension, now nepotism, the same old thing. Corruption was at its highest peak. Civil servants were not getting paid in under the Taba administration. People are getting paid on time. I remember my dad, when he takes pay, he will bring that bag of rice and food and everything, and some money will be left over to put in our pocket and go to school. So there was a system in place. Okay, under the Salvador regime, he started off okay. He said good things, and he was popular with the broader population. He made his mistakes too, as well. And those that planned the coup or members of that PRC, some of them were eliminated through accusation or allegations of coup d'état. And we see everything just started going spiraling downhill from there on. The election came, uh, Samuel Doe won, which many dispute in a way where, this topic is very sensitive. I
Well,
want to go. This topic is very
let's stay with the
sensitive.
rest right a little bit. Let's stay with the rest right because
Yeah,
it's good we're having this discussion so that and I hope we can follow up because we would not be able to cover
yeah,
everything today, and so that our audience would not think we want to be here that we know everything, we want to cover everything. It's not
yeah.
possible. So if they were expecting us to do that, they would be disappointed because we don't have everything. But let's say that I agree with you that October's credibility was severely damaged by the rest riot. But not only that, some steps he made, and the discussion is to help our leaders to reflect on this thing, so to avoid making the same mistakes to lead to chaos in society, and then we will find scapegoats for that. So after that, in March 1980, around March 1980, Toba ordered the banning of PAL, the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, and had backers Matthew and the rest of the organization leaders arrested and charged with treason. that even propelled the country to the cliffs. So in early 19 in early April 12, 1980, that's when the 17 non-commissioned officer of the AFL decided, led by Samuel Doe, to overthrow.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe pushed by other people, influenced by other people. We don't know. We've heard all kinds of theories about how this whole coup was orchestrated and implemented. But the point I want to make is that our point for this discussion today is to bring our leader to the attention to say, watch out, be mindful of your policies, your decisions. You may mean well, but the
Mhm.
implementation thereof could cause problem and misunderstanding because people may not grasp the direction you're taking. So it takes more explanation, more clarity for the
Yeah.
people to appreciate what you really want to do and own what you want to do and move with it. That's what we want to say, Alex.
Yeah, and there should be political dialogue. And if you look at the October years, and even the 1980 revolution, we see there was a lack of political dialogue. Even though dialogue was going on, but the government's immediate resort to force rather than seeking dialogue or compromise with the protesters and even the critics can be demonstrated or can be seen as a lack of willingness to engage with dissenting voices. And this is where our society is today. When people criticize or speak truth to power, they target you, as an enemy. And I think if we are to create an atmosphere or an environment for dissenting voices, will help us to have different ideas because it is an approach that can even if they try to shut out dissenting voices, it will be an approach that will alienate citizens who feel that our concerns are not heard or ignored or suppressed, and of course that will undermine any remaining support for leadership. And so I saw that in the Toba's leadership as well. And
Yes, yes.
Mansfield Dupu said here, there was appearance of a system in place, but underneath was rotten. That's his well, yeah, maybe some of the things we're talking about, economic disparities and all of that, but we'll find a time to where we'll just look at the whole or examine the whole Turbo years, okay? Because Turbo did some good things too, a lot of other good things that we need to look at. Some of the
Of
proposals like
course, of
higher
course, of course,
heights,
of course,
and
of
some
course,
other economic
of
plans that he
course.
had in place. So we'll take a time where we'll take a whole look at the Turbo years and examine that, look at all of his successes and failures and other things that we can learn from or takeaways. And then we'll look at the PRC and Master Sergeant Samuel Doe's years and examine everything that went on and look at the pros and the cons and see where we can get some takeaways. And then we'll look at the Taylor administration. We have an ongoing discussion. Like I said, we don't have enough time here to discuss everything today,
No,
but
but Alice, Alice, I totally agree with
yeah.
you. This discussion is not to say or to suggest or even think that the Tory regime was so bad and did nothing good. That is not the purpose of this discussion, but rather to accentuate and highlight the good and the bad so that our leaders who are in power or to come will glean something from this different leadership. I agree. We will discuss Doe or Taylor. And if you don't mind, we're going to Tuckman because Tuckman had his high and low points. He ruled for 27 years. There were some good things and some bad things. And in fact, in 1975, just said it before we leave, we'll soon be closing. In May 1975, Liberia became a signatory to the treaty that established the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. So that was doing Thomas regime in order to create a common market between ECOWAS nations and peoples so that to have the commonality amongst the 15 West African states. He did that on a leadership. He also became very involved in other causes of the African situation. But one thing that he also did that brought problem was that he severed relationship with Israel during the Yom Kippur War, and then that added to the flame that really got at him. So we other time, Ellis. So we will find time to come back again, brother.
Yes, and we like all the expressions here today. We'll continue again. We are here every Saturday, the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So if you live in Liberia or any other place in the diaspora, mark the time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Just look at your time and see and join us. Let us talk about these things, okay? The negatives, the positives, and what can we take from there so that we can see where our country is going, the direction. And
Ellis,
we are
let me say
making,
something before you finish, please. About this Manfi Duopo. I
yeah.
think perhaps he knows what he's talking about because he's been in the vanguard too for student politics. Yeah, so I know who he is. His dad also suffered at the hands of the power that were his dad. I think Moses Duopo. He was one of the strong advocate for justice and human rights in Liberia, good governance and the rest of that. So maybe most Mansfield know what he's talking about. I just wanted to add to that. So I hope he can accept our invitation, at least to come and discuss this topic with us in the future.
Oh yeah, yeah, that would be nice for Mansfield to come on to talk about this. But like I said, all this is all we are all sharing. Okay, we are sharing our history together. We are sharing a way forward for progress and development, and social cohesion, and reconciliation, and healing, and also ultimately unity and peace. And so these are very good national discourse that we should have on a platform like this, and so that we can be reminded not only of our history but also look at the lessons and see where we are right now as a people, honor one God, and of course indivisible. And this is how we end our podcast for today. My name is Pastor Alexander Red, and Reverend Suah S. Deddeh was also here as the host. And please share our link until next week, Saturday, the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. From our end, we'd like to say thank you
Oh,
so
he
much
said okay,
for
Ellis. He said okay any day. That's good.
good. Thank you, Mansfield. All right. And until then, we'll see you again. And don't forget to share this link with your friends, your families, and your loved ones. So until then, may you have a pleasant day.